So why did you move? So surprise, surprise, you might not be familiar with this backdrop. Maybe if you have been hanging out with us for some time, or if you've gone and taken a sneak peek back at old episodes of the living room, you may notice that we're in a different living room, and that's because we're in a different house, and we're no longer in the States. We are in Bermuda. We moved to the beautiful island of Bermuda in August of 2022. And this decision was made in February of 2022. And I just kind of want to take you back to 2021 because we have to rewind the clock all the way back there just to kind of give you a sense of what led us to this place. We received an invitation from a local religious conference that governs the churches and the pastors here on the island to consider coming and serving here on the island of Bermuda. And initially, in the second half of 2021, neither of us we didn't have a knee-jerk reaction to say yes to that. I was in school. It was still in an interesting phase during COVID. And Kyla was working on some projects at her job. And so we didn't have an initial leaning towards saying yes. And that was, like I said, mid to second half of 2021. And over the next 8 months, we really kind of prayed about it. And towards the end of 8 months, our prayers increased in frequency. And we also began to talk with key persons in our lives, our parents, trusted mentors, just wanting to expose ourselves to feedback so that we can make an informed decision. And after 8 months in February, we contacted the administrators of that body and said, yes, we would love to come and serve. And that's what led us here on a professional sense. But what I really want to focus on is just kind of a key element that helped us to open our hearts, open our minds to what God was saying to us. I said initially we were a bit hesitant for a lot of basic reasons. We didn't know how we as a couple would do moving from the access to a lot of different resources in the States to maybe not no access, but limited access here in Bermuda, small island. Amazon Prime doesn't work as quickly as it does in the States. Ticket prices to and from the island are such where you don't really have an economy market like you do in the States when it comes to air travel, and you have to fly or take sea travel, but that's not really an option for us. And so what we did was we talked to one of my big brothers in ministry, and he asked us a question. He said, "What season are you in?" And just the way he phrased the question matched probably with what time of year it was. That is, a few months had gone by at that point of us thinking about it. It just kind of opened up some windows. And we began to think about not only what season were we in as a couple, but what season our family members were in on my side of the family, on her side of the family. And it ultimately led us to consider how we wanted to spend the next several years of our lives. And after much conversation and thought, we said, listen, it would be great to be able to have some time in Bermuda, which is where my wife was born and raised, on the fabric of our family history. And perhaps this invitation from an employment standpoint and a ministry standpoint opens up that opportunity. We weren't pursuing it. When people would ask us, hey, would you ever live and work and pastor in Bermuda? We said, yeah, down the line. I'm sure that'll be a wonderful thing for us. We didn't have a date or a timeline or a strategy, but the opportunity created a moment for us to think through what season we were going into next. I was very concerned about leaving the church where we were in Virginia because, as I said, we were in a COVID phase where we were still virtual, and I really wanted to get them back into our church building. And I was finishing school, so I wanted to have that achievement behind me before moving. But in the conference where I was, we were already talking about potentially moving. They were talking to me saying, hey, listen, your time in Virginia is coming to an end. And they were sharing with me a couple of options where they were. So transition was already a part of our conversations in life. And it just so happened that there were a number of different opportunities there that we had a chance to think through and pray through. Now, in another episode, I'm sure we can talk more about how to trust God in transition, how to discern God's voice and leading in transition. But one principle that was shared with us, I just share with you. Ask the question, sit with the question, what season am I in? Am I in a season of beginnings, of Genesis, of origins? Is something starting or commencing? Or am I in a season of progress, of traversing, of going from A to Z? Am I in between? Maybe wilderness sojourn. Or maybe you're in a moment where, listen, things are thriving right now and I just can't really uproot and leave. Or maybe you're in a culminating season, right? The curtains are closing, the job is being done, the project is almost across the finish line. Whatever you are where you are for is coming to an end, and you just have some senses that, this may be kind of the beginnings of a transition. Like I said, for us, it was about 8 months, which is rare, right? And shout out to our team who was willing to dialogue with us patiently and kind of hold that door open. And as with all transitions, it comes with transitional challenges and pains. There's always something that you know, and then there's a lot that you don't know. There are questions that were raised and answered, and then there were questions that we didn't think to raise. Therefore, we didn't pursue answers. And I think that's a part of the journey of faith. It's filled with delightful surprises and some surprising difficulties. But through it all, the Lord helps us. And so we came here in response to this prompting from God that this is a season where you need to have in-person time with your family. That's been beautiful. It's also allowed me to come in contact with some emotional aches as well. We miss certain rhythms in the States. We miss having easier access to family and friends in the States. And we anticipate perhaps at one point in time, if it's God's will, to be reunited in that front. But for right now, it is just great to have a sense that we can reach back to, that we didn't create this opportunity. And I'm in a position right now at the beginning of this year, to be honest, friends, where I'm saying, God, I know that you have us here for a reason. And it has to be deeper than what it is that we currently are aware of. And I'm hungry and thirsty for the type of experience here that allows us for years to come, even the rest of our lives, if you allow me to reach that far, to say this was a God thing. There's a reason for this season. There was a divine fingerprint on this move. That yes, God used human personalities and infrastructures, but man, God had an agenda. He had a plan, he had a purpose. And it's kind of Abrahamic in nature, right? Go. Well, how's it all going to work out? And at least we had the courtesy of knowing where we were going. Abraham didn't know where he was going. And so that's where we've been. Last year was our first full calendar year, and we're starting another one. We've celebrated an anniversary here, birthdays, no FaceTiming in. And let me tell you how good God is. I didn't even plan to share this in this episode, but let me just share with you how good God is. At the beginning of 2023, we prayed a prayer. Kyle and I asked the Lord to allow us to be able to have travel experiences with our family. This was January of 2023. A buddy of mine came to the island to run a marathon and ended up preaching for us, as well as coming back the next month and preaching again for our youth team here on the island. And in conversations, he said, man, I want you to come out to where I live in London, England, and do some ministry work with our young people. So we had prayed this prayer that we would have travel opportunities with our family in January. And we were just saying that as a general vision of the future. Like, man, God, it would be great to get to a point where we as family, my family here in Bermuda, my family in the States, can go and travel and make some memories in our adult years together. Let me tell you what, do you know God answered that prayer in a profound way. My family from the States, Kyla, me, we were able to enjoy several days in London and Birmingham, England. God answered that prayer for us in a way that I think reached our hearts, because we were all, man, feeling the pain of distance, right? And he allowed us to have an international experience. Together, we ate great food, we visited sites, we had great laughs and conversations. When we first arrived there, man, our Airbnb situation was not what we thought it was going to be, but we were able to pivot with the help of my boy, man, and get a nice hotel, which was far better than what we originally had. And so I guess, man, as I think about that and looking at this new year, I just want to encourage you, put some prayers on the record. Ask God for what's on your heart. You never know how swiftly he can respond to that prayer. But even if it doesn't happen immediately, just know that God can be cultivating circumstances. He can be utilizing scenarios. He is nurturing your heart, preparing you for what he has in store for you. So that was a highlight for me last year. And I'm looking forward to more highlights this year. So what's my word for the year? My word for this year is invest. Invest. That's my personal word, and I've shared it with my church. Our theme for this year is invest your best. And what we're pursuing are opportunities for us to give God our very best postures for learning. We're not assuming that we know it all, that we have it all, and that we've got nothing to learn and no one to learn from. No, we are very clear that for the plans and purposes God has ahead of us, we'll probably need to partner. We need to be trained and developed. Personally, investing is going to be important. As I think about the future God has for my family and for me, as I think about the ways that he is going to make clear, the doors that he is going to open, as I think about the purposes that he has, as I just dream and vision and imagine what can be, I just believe that God is saying, Rich, make the investments, right? And the theme passage of that is Matthew 25, verses 14 through 31. And it's the parable of the talents. Master goes away, leaves portions of his property to 3 servants, 5 bags, a bag of 5 talents to the first servant, 2 talents to the second servant, and 1 talent to the third servant. And what really gripped my heart was this third servant who digs a hole, buries the talent. When the master comes back, he digs the talent back up and says, "Here you go, master. Here you go. Here you go, sir." He digs the talent back up and says, "Here you go, sir." Right? And you can see the dirt all on it. And the master reprimands him, right? And that's probably an understatement. He says, "You wicked and lazy servant, if you knew who I was and how I go about standing on my business, how come you didn't at least invest this with bankers so that I could have gained interest?" He was called lazy and wicked because not that he did less than his best, he did less than his least, right? And that stuck out to me. Man, I do not want to have that report. I actually want to walk in faithfulness. I want to hear the Lord say, "Well done." And it's about making those investments with whatever God has invested in us. To whom much is given, much is required. And so this is one of those investments, not just limiting conversation, communication touch points to live moments where I'm at my church or someone else's event, but to be able to have an opportunity to have conversations with you. What's your word for the year? Do you have a theme? Do you have a kind of guiding light that governs your choices, your decisions, helps you erect boundaries in your life, gives clarity to where you're going to say yes and where you're going to say no, that helps you to be very intentional about the relationships that you nurture and invest in? What is it for you? Drop it in the comments. I'm excited, y'all. I really am. I'm pumped up about where we're going to go together in this year as we have conversations here in the living room, listening to one another, learning from one another, so that we might live the best lives God has called us to live. I can't wait to see you next time. Until then, may God bless you and keep on living. Peace.